Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast, a weekly Torah portion podcast where I read the weekly Torah portion and provide my own personal interpretation of what I think the text means. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody once again, I am not a Torah scholar by trade, I'm just somebody who wanted to study Torah. This week's Torah portion is Vayishlach, and it is for Shabbat on the 19th of Kislev, 5784, also known as December 2nd, 2023. The translation of Vayishlach is, "and he sent," and it refers to the very first line of this week's Torah portion. As always, if you'd like to follow along with the text, you can visit Chabad.org to see where I am reading the translation. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Genesis chapter 32, first portion, verse 4. Jacob sent angels ahead of him to his brother Esau, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, "So shall you say to my master, to Esau, Thus said your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban, and I have tarried until now. And I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, manservants, and maidservants, and I have sent to tell this to my master, to find favor in your eyes." The angels returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother, to Esau, and he is also coming toward you, and 400 men are with him." Jacob became very frightened, and was distressed. So he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and the cattle and the camels into 2 camps. And he said, "If Esau comes to one camp and strikes it down, the remaining camp will escape." And Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord, who said to me, Return to your land and to your birthplace, and I will do good to you. I have become small from all the kindnesses, and from all the truth that you have rendered your servant, for with my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Now deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him, lest he come and strike me, and strike a mother with children. And you said, I will surely do good with you, and I will make your seed as numerous as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted because of multitude." Thus concludes the first portion, a rather short one. So, Vayishlach, as we mentioned before, means, "and he sent." So, in the beginning here, he sends the angels ahead of him to his brother, and actually gives them commands. So, this is interesting, because Abraham made a similar comment to Eliezer, his servant, regarding finding a wife for Isaac, how angels were sent ahead of him. Jacob sends angels ahead of himself to go talk to his brother. So I think this is very significant, the level of power that is bestowed to those who carry this blessing that comes from the line of Abraham to each chosen son. It really is quite powerful. And the idea that he is so subserviently saying, "your servant Jacob," he's putting himself, basically, he's kowtowing to his brother. He's lowering himself before his older brother. And he is humbling himself, all in hopes of curbing his brother's anger. So he's basically saying, I have tarried, right? So, in other words, I've been gone for too long. I took my time. I should have come back sooner. But I have acquired these many things, and I just want to get favor, right? He wants his brother to look upon him with kindness and with favor. And the angels tell him, yeah, he's coming this way, and he's got 400 guys. So this is nothing but terrifying, because who moves with that many men unless you're going to declare war? So that's his perception. So he starts taking a step to mitigate things. He splits his camp in half, and he basically is just like, hey, if one goes, the other one can at least survive. So it's really a terrifying time for him. And at this point, he's fearful. And I think this is a difference between he and Abraham. Abraham was utterly fearless and faithful. He had complete conviction and faith. And now we see Jacob, who wavers a bit in his faith. He's asking, so in other words, the steps he's taking, by taking these steps to mitigate the danger, shows that he is at least fearful of what his brother might do. Admittedly, Abraham did also act in such ways when he made sure his wife said, "I'm your sister," not "I'm your wife," because he wanted to keep himself from being murdered. But in this case, this just seems like contingency, but also, hey, God, please don't forget about us. And so he basically asks of the Lord to please honor what was promised. Very terrifying time, and it's certainly not anything to underestimate. So now we're going to get into the second portion. Genesis chapter 32, verse 14. So he lodged there on that night, and he took from what came into his hand a gift for his brother Esau, 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 nursing camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 she-donkeys and 10 he-donkeys. And he gave into the hands of his servants each herd individually. And he said to his servants, Pass on ahead of me, and make a space between one herd and another herd. And he commanded for the first one, saying, When my brother Esau meets you, and asks you, saying, To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and for whom are these before you? You shall say, I belong to your servant Jacob. It is a gift sent to my master, to Esau, and behold, he himself is behind us. And he commanded also the second one, also the third one, also all those who followed the herd, saying, In this manner shall you speak to Esau when you meet him. And you shall say, Also behold, your servant Jacob is behind us, for he said, I will appease his anger with the gift that is going before me, and afterwards I will see his face, perhaps he will favor me. So the gift passed on before him, and he lodged that night in the camp. And he arose during that night, and he took his 2 wives and his 2 maidservants and his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of the Jabbok. And he took them and brought them across the stream, and he took across what was his. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he could not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip became dislocated as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for dawn is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you have blessed me. So he said to him, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have commanding power with an angel of God and with men, and you have prevailed. And Jacob asked and said, Now tell me your name. And he said, Why is it that you ask for my name? And he blessed him there. So this is the very iconic story of Jacob wrestling the angel, but first let's talk a little bit about what happens before this. So Jacob's plan is to essentially appease his brother and offer him gifts of many, many things, and he's going to do it in a series of deliveries. So it's not going to be all at once. It's going to be, here's a gift, and here's another gift, and here's another gift, and here's another gift, and he keeps sending guys ahead of him with the hopes that eventually all these gifts are going to make Esau, oh, you know what? I'm actually happy to see you, little brother. I don't want to kill you. So that's his goal. All the same, he's fearful, and he moves his children, and they cross the ford of Jabbok, and then he just is left alone, and suddenly he gets this random encounter with a stranger, and they wrestle all night long, but he's not able to get away from Jacob, and so he damages Jacob's hip, but also Jacob essentially wins, and he demands a blessing. So, his actions are very much intense here. The extent that he's going, to demand a blessing, and understanding that the dawn is breaking. So I've heard commentary that beings like this man can't be out at dawn. I don't really know the context beyond there's just this spiritual quality, perhaps, or some sort of command that these individuals of the angelic nature have to adhere to. I don't know quite the details, but in any case, it is said that he wrestled with an angel and he succeeded. And so he took an injury, but in exchange, he received the blessing of the name Israel. And he said, Now tell me your name. And he said, Why is it that you ask for my name? And he blessed him there. So I kind of believe that him saying, Why is it that you ask for my name, is because he's kind of implying, like, what does that matter? The only name you need to know is the name of the Lord above. Perhaps that's the reason. I don't really know beyond that, but that's kind of my initial instinct. But also the acknowledgement, you have commanding power with God and with men, or with an angel of God and with men, and you have prevailed. So this is extremely significant, as we'll understand in the beginning of the next portion. We'll elaborate a little bit more on that, but the blessing here is everything that Jacob is really looking for, and it's the thing he needed to have no matter what. And it's also an interesting personality trait of his, but he's got this tenacity. From the womb, he held on to his brother's ankle, and now, to the very dawn, this man who turns out to be an angel, he wrestles and contends with this angel without any sort of backing down. He refuses to back down, so much so that he has to actually get his hip dislocated in the process. So, really a very intense battle, but one that does not cease until he gets what he's after, which is pretty characteristic of Jacob at this point. But he receives the name Israel in the blessing. Now we'll go ahead and move on to the next. Third portion. Genesis chapter 32, verse 31. And Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I saw an angel face to face, and my soul was saved. And the sun rose for him when he passed Penuel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore the children of Israel may not eat the displaced tendon, which is on the socket of the hip, until this day, for he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, in the hip sinew. Genesis chapter 33, verse 1. Jacob lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children with Leah and with Rachel and with the 2 maidservants. And he placed the maidservants and their children first, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and her Joseph last. And he went ahead of them and prostrated himself to the ground 7 times, until he came close to his brother. And Esau ran toward him and embraced him, and he fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and the children, and he said, Who are these to you? And he said, The children with whom God has favored your servant. So, this is the most powerful, immediate turnaround. The opening here, as we conclude this third portion, he named it Peniel because I saw an angel face to face and my soul was saved. So before this happened, recall he had been basically pleading with God, the God of his fathers, for salvation. He asked him to be saved. He asked him for help. And what ended up coming, he was waiting for the moment. And this angel that he wrestled with, he must have divined that this was his chance. This angel, this being, was the answer to what was given. And that's also why the angel did not give his name. So perhaps fighting with this angel was a test for him, given by the Lord, but everything was according to the Lord's plan. And so he says, I saw an angel face to face, and my soul was saved. He received this blessing, and he realizes he's saved because of this experience. So that's the significance of it. And really having that acknowledgement that the reason he went through all this intense moment, all this meditation, this isolation, and finally this wrestling match was to secure what he had asked the Lord for. He had to really earn it or take it by securing that blessing. And it was all according to plan. But it comes with the consequence of the injury and, of course, significance passed down regarding the rules of eating, having to do with the hip. So next up, his brother comes, and this is really telling. But he sees what's happening. He sees his brother coming with all those men. So what he does is, first he takes his collection of wives and children, and he basically puts them in order of least to most favorite. So in the very front are the family having to do with the maidservants, then Leah, and finally at the end, Rachel with Joseph. So we're seeing some abundant favoritism here, and one might ask, why? Why did he do it this way? And the answer is, well, it says that he's going to get in front of them now, and he bows 7 times. He prostrates himself to the ground 7 times. So what is the significance? Basically, he's at the front. So let's say Esau decides to kill everybody. He's going to kill him. Then he's going to keep killing. He's going to kill the maidservant children. And then he's going to keep going and do it again. Maybe he'll kill Leah and her children. And finally, his hope is, if it gets that bad, perhaps just maybe the ones at the very end of the line will be spared. That is what I'm assuming is his logic. In other words, he wanted to mitigate as much risk to Rachel and Joseph, and also Rachel's unborn child, by putting everybody else in front of them. So his blatant favoritism never seems to fade away or be lost. And so here we have it again. But in any case, things work out for the best, because as it turns out, his brother is just so happy to see him. You could consider this perhaps a miracle, or perhaps Esau really already was so very overjoyed to see his brother, and there was no need for all that terror. It's possible, but it's not 100% sure. It could be believed that it was done through divine means, or maybe it was the love between brothers. We can assume it in many different ways, but ultimately, he sees his nieces and nephews, and he says, who are these to you? Oh, they're my family. They're your children. Awesome. So, let's go ahead and move on to the fourth portion. Chapter 33, Genesis, verse 6. And the maidservants and their children drew near and prostrated themselves. And Leah and her children drew near and prostrated themselves. And after them, Joseph and Rachel drew near and prostrated themselves. And he said, What is to you the purpose of all this camp that I have met? And he said, To find favor in my master's eyes. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. Thereupon Jacob said, Please, no. If indeed I have found favor in your eyes, then you shall take my gift from my hand, because I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of an angel, and you have accepted me. Now take my gift, which has been brought to you, for God has favored me with it, and because I have everything. He prevailed upon him, and he took it. Thereupon he said, Travel, and we will go, and I will go alongside you. And he said to him, My master knows that the children are tender, and the flocks and the cattle which are raising their young depend upon me, and if they overdrive them one day, all the flocks will die. Now let my master go ahead before his servant, and I will move at my own slow pace, according to the pace of the work that is before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my master to Seir. Thereupon Esau said, Let me leave you with some of the people who are with me. But he said, Why do that? May I find favor in my master's eyes. So Esau returned on that day on his way to Seir. And Jacob traveled to Succoth and built himself a house. And for his cattle he made booths, therefore he named the place Succoth. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram, and he encamped before the city. And he bought the part of the field where he had pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 kesitas. There he erected an altar, and he named it God is the God of Israel. And so, with this in mind, we conclude the fourth portion. So, after the coast is clear, the way this breaks down, first the maidservants and children, they come and bow. Then the next ones, Leah's family comes and bow. And finally, Joseph and Rachel. So it's interesting that they come in this order, and you can almost see this as like continuing to test the waters a little bit. So they are ultimately they decide, okay, this is safe. Also, what is the purpose of all this camp that I have met? He's basically saying, what's all this that you've been putting about? What is all this? What is the meaning behind everything that's going on here? And Jacob just says it's basically to please you. And Esau says, no, keep it. I've got enough. But Jacob insists upon it, and insists and does so invoking the name of their father's God, and ultimately Esau accepts. And then he says, let's go together, let's travel. Come, brothers, let's go back together. But Jacob, he says, no. If I go too fast, my flocks are going to die. The children are young. Why don't you go ahead and I'll just follow it at my own pace and I'll get there eventually. And Esau once again says, well, let me leave with you some of the people. So in other words, he's trying to give him some men here to help him out or maybe keep an eye on him, right? You can always question you can be questioning the motives here. I'm going to go out and suggest on the other direction because I know there's always this tendency to question them. But no, I think I'm going to actually put genuine faith into what's happening here with Esau. He's actually offering his brother this, not out of some sort of threat, but he actually wants to help out his brother. Like he loves his brother. Despite everything that they felt in the past, maybe his personality really did change. Maybe he finally found peace with everything. And also because he received his own blessing. I mean, he has no need to hate his brother anymore. He's got a successful life. He's got a little army here. So why not, Why not look out for his little brother now, who is clearly willing to be subservient to him and prostrate himself before him and all that stuff. So, let us travel together. And it's kind of nice. But Jacob isn't interested in that, so he finds a clever way to get around it, and he goes to eventually, once they agree, they part ways, and he goes to Sukkot, builds the booths there for him and for his animals. He builds himself a house, so he's going to hang out there for some time. And he gets to Shechem, and from there, he puts down the altar and named it God is the God of Israel. So it's basically, after the conclusion of this very harrowing experience, he can't help but offer a tribute, right? I mean, he begged and pleaded and hoped for salvation, and it was given. You better take some time to make some sort of consecration for the Lord that protected you, right? And that's what he did. Now moving on to the fifth portion. Genesis chapter 34, verse 1. Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to look among the daughters of the land. And Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, and he took her, lay with her, and violated her. And his soul cleaved to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the girl, and spoke to the girl's heart. And Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, Take this girl for me as a wife. Jacob had heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field, and Jacob kept silent until they came home. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. And Jacob's sons had come from the field when they heard, and the men were grieved, and they burned fiercely, because he had committed a scandalous act in Israel, to lie with a daughter of Jacob, and such ought not to be done. And Hamor spoke with them, saying, My son Shechem, his soul has a liking for your daughter. Please give her to him for a wife, and intermarry with us. You shall give us your daughters, and you shall take our daughters for yourselves, and you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Remain, do business there, and settle there. And Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, May I find favor in your eyes. Whatever you tell me, I will give. Impose upon me a large marriage settlement and gifts, and I will give as much as you ask of me. But give me the girl for a wife. Thereupon Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with cunning, and they spoke because, after all, he had defiled their sister Dinah. And they said to them, We cannot do this thing to give our sister to a man who has a foreskin, for that is a disgrace to us. But with this, however, we will consent to you, if you will be like us, that every male will be circumcised. Then we will give you our daughters, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you do not listen to us to be circumcised, we will take our daughter and go. Their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, the son of Hamor. And the young man did not delay to do the thing because he desired Jacob's daughter, and he was the most honored in all his father's household. And Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city, and they spoke to the people of their city, saying, These men are peaceful with us, and they will dwell in the land and do business there. And the land, behold, it is spacious enough for them. We will take their daughters for ourselves as wives, and we will give them our daughters. However, only with this condition will the men consent to dwell with us, to become one people, by every male among us being circumcised, just as they are circumcised. Then shall not their cattle, their property, and all their beasts be ours? But let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. And all those coming out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male, all who went out of the gate of his city, became circumcised. Now it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that Jacob's two sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword, and they came upon the city with confidence, and they slew every male. And Hamor and his son Shechem they slew with the edge of the sword, and they took Dinah out of Shechem's house and left. Jacob's sons came upon the slain, and plundered the city that had defiled their sister. Their flocks and their cattle and their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and whatever was in the field they took. And all their wealth and all their infants and their wives they captured and plundered, and all that was in the house. Thereupon Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have troubled me, to discredit me among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and among the Perizzites, and I am few in number, and they will gather against me and attack me, and I and my household will be destroyed. And they said, Shall he make our sister like a harlot? Chapter 35, verse 1. And God said to Jacob, Arise and go up to Bethel, and abide there, and make there an altar to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. Thereupon Jacob said to his household and to all those who were with him, Remove the deities of the foreign nations which are in your midst, Purify yourselves and change your clothes. And we will arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar to the God who answered me on the day of my distress, and was with me on the way that I went. And they gave Jacob all the deities of the nations that were in their possession, and the earrings that were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the terebinth that was near Shechem. Then they traveled, and the fear of God was upon the cities that were around them, so that they did not pursue Jacob's sons. And Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people who were with him. He built there an altar, and he called the place El Bethel, for there God had been revealed to him when he fled before his brother Esau. And Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel, beneath the plain, so he named it Alon Bachut. And God appeared again to Jacob when he came from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. God said to him, Your name is Jacob. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. And he named him Israel. And God said to him, I am the Almighty God. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a multitude of nations shall come into existence from you, and kings shall come forth from your loins. Thus concludes verse or portion number 5. So this is a pretty long one with a very, very consequential series of events. So Dinah, who is the daughter of Leah, she goes to kind of meet the girls of the local land, and while she's out doing that, a man named Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, he's the prince, he sees her, and he likes her. And so he takes her home, and they fornicate. And so it says his soul cleaves to her. So he's genuinely in love with this girl, it's clear, and he's willing to do absolutely anything and everything. But the problem is, this entire interaction, extremely inappropriate. Very, very inappropriate. And when Jacob hears about it, he keeps his cool, but ultimately when his sons find out, it's over. Already in their head, they're like, this is unacceptable. Now, Hamor, he's basically saying, well, listen, we have children that happen to like each other very much, so why don't we just become one people? Let's intermarry. And you'll stay with us, and you'll take our daughters, and we'll take your daughters, and we'll basically become like one people, and you can be right there as part of our community. So this all works out. And Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, whatever you tell me, I will give, right? So he's willing to do literally anything. He says, give me a make a large request, I'll do it. But just give me her as a wife. So the sons, the brothers of Dinah, say, yeah, we can't let this happen because you're not circumcised. So obviously we can't allow this to happen. So all the men that are part of your community, all of them need to be circumcised. Otherwise, it's a no deal. So if you'll do it, we'll let it happen. Of course, they get an emphatic, okay, you got it, no problem. And so Hamor and Shechem, they go and they basically tell all their people, hey, everybody, if we do this thing, we're going to be intermarried with that really successful group of people that are living outside of town. And when that happens, guess what? Their success will be our success. It's a great idea. And so they also say, these men are peaceful with us. So it's kind of sad knowing what's coming. But that's their perception, and this is what they say to convince the townsfolk, then we'll all become one people and what's theirs will be ours and it's going to be great. So they all say yes to it. While they are in recovery mode, so circumcision is a very intense procedure, especially if you're an adult. So what ended up happening here is they've all been circumcised, and now they're all too injured to do anything. Like, everybody's at home basically recovering from their circumcision procedure. So they can't fight, they can't do much of anything. And while this is the case, 2 of the sons of Jacob go into town and they massacre everybody. Why? Because they know they can't fight back, and because their prince defiled their sister. And so they kill all the men who are unable to defend themselves because they're recovering from their circumcision. Then they proceed to plunder everything. So they take all the treasures that are to be taken. And not only that, they take the infants and the wives they captured and plundered and all that was in the house. So we can basically interpret that as they made slaves out of them. When humans are plunder, they basically become your servants, especially in this era. So they killed all the men and took the rest as their prisoners or as their property from thenceforth. So this is obviously very, very bad. This is just terrible. But Jacob also, Jacob's not happy about it either when he finds out. You have troubled me to discredit me among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and among the Perizzites. And I am few in number, and they will gather against me and attack me, and I and my household will be destroyed. And so he's basically saying, what have you done? What have you done? Because of what you just did, all these local people are now going to want to get rid of me. They're going to want to wipe us out because of what you just did. And that's going to be the end of it. But they basically justify their actions. Shall he make our sister like a harlot? Right? So that's how they go ahead and basically excuse themselves from their own actions. It's because of what he did to their sister. It's messed up, right? Because, yeah, the circumstances, how it started are not good. But obviously this prince was very serious about her. He was more than willing to do anything they asked for. All he wanted was to marry this girl. But this is where we get into the broader problem here. Why was this not possible? It's because of the heritage. Yes, it is true. Perhaps this could have happened to any group of people, but it specifically happened to this tribe of people here. And what are these people? They are Canaanites. They are among the descendants of Canaan. And if we go back to the stories of Noah, what happens? Noah cursed the descendants of Canaan, his youngest son's fourth son. That bloodline was cursed to be servants to the other two bloodlines. And so, that cursed bloodline cannot be permitted to intermarry with the blessed bloodline of Jacob. So even though this horrible thing happened, there is an ancestral consequence for what happened with Canaan because of what his father, I think his father's name was Ham or Chem, I think it was Ham, what he does to Noah while Noah is drunk and vulnerable, and he curses his grandson Canaan to be a slave to all of his other uncles' families, basically. So here's what's happening, right? That's exactly what happens here. They got rid of all the men, and they plundered the women and children. They turned them into slaves. So this is a fulfillment of the curse of Noah on the people of Canaan. Cursed to now be slaves to this particular bloodline. And again, this is a fulfillment of a curse by a very holy and noble person who was Noah, basically the last man, right? The one chosen to be preserved. So even though this is terrible, which I think as a humanitarian anybody could agree what happened here is just absolutely horrible, and of course would also invoke a great deal of consequence in most circumstances, it is justified as something that was going to happen because of their cursed ancestry. Not that I'm saying it's a nice thing. Noah is the one who cursed them. It's not like God did it. Like Noah placed a curse on them. So that's just the consequence of being cursed by their ancestor. It ended up being manifested, and sure enough, they were enslaved. But yeah, now that is a very glaring problem. Well, great. Good job, kids. Now they're going to want to wipe us out. I had a good name. Like Jacob had a great name among the people here. He was all good. Everything was fine. But this had to happen. And now, because of what his sons did, he can't see himself staying here safely. Like, he's now concerned that there will be a retaliation from the locals because these people who are basically just sojourning immigrants, nomads, settling in temporarily, just murdered the entire people of one particular village or city. So, yeah, that's definitely no good. And Jacob is fully aware of the consequences. So, moving into the next part, Jacob is basically summoned to go to Bethel and to live there and to make an altar And so he's going to go fulfill that, and then Jacob tells everybody, get rid of all your idols, all the deities of foreign nations, right? Get rid of all that stuff, and purify yourselves, change your clothes, and we're going to go there, and we're going to go make this altar and honor the God who gave me all I have. It was with me when I fled. So they obey, and as they're traveling, it turns out even though the people probably want to, just like Laban when he chased him down and was overtaking him after he fled from Laban's house, these people are filled with the fear of the Lord, so they don't end up doing anything. They just let him go. And it's because even though something terrible happened, he has divine protection, so they know better. They just have no choice but to let it be. And so he goes and he creates the altar, and he calls it El Bethel, for there God had been revealed to him when he fled from before his brother. And on top of this, we have someone die. Deborah, Rebecca's nurse, dies, and so she's buried beneath Bethel, beneath the plain, so he named it Alam Bachut. God appeared to him again when he came from Padan Aram. So on his way back, God appears and blesses him. And now he gets like the formal title. Your name is Jacob. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. So he was previously blessed by the angel, right? And now we get the full story here. Earlier, he wrestled with that angel, and the angel said, he asked the angel, what is your name? He says, what are you asking me my name for? Why do you want to know my name? And now we see it's because the blessing is really coming from the Most High. His name is Israel, this day forth. I am the Almighty God, be fruitful and multiply. And you know how the rest goes. So now we can go ahead and move on to the sixth portion. Genesis chapter 35. Verse 12. And the land that I gave to Abraham and to Isaac I will give to you, and to your seed after you I will give the land. And God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. Now Jacob had erected a monument in the place where he had spoken with him, a stone monument, and he poured a libation upon it, and then he poured oil upon it. Jacob named the place where God had spoken with him Bethel. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was still some distance to come to Ephrat, and Rachel gave birth, and her labor was difficult. It came to pass when she had such difficulty giving birth, that the midwife said to her, do not be afraid, for this one too is a son for you. And it came to pass when her soul departed, for she died, that she named him Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died, and she was buried on the road to Ephrat, which is Bethlehem. And Jacob erected a monument on her grave. That is the tombstone of Rachel until this day. Israel journeyed, and he pitched his tent at some distance past the tower of Eder. And it came to pass when Israel sojourned in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard of it. And so the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, Gad and Asher. These are Jacob's sons who were born to him in Padan Aram. And Jacob came to his father Isaac to Mamre, Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac dwelt. The days of Isaac were 180 years. And Isaac expired and died, and was gathered into his peoples, old and sated with his days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Chapter 36. And these are the generations of Esau, that is Edom. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan, Adah, daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Oholibamah, daughter of Anah, daughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and Basemath, daughter of Ishmael, sister of Nebaioth. And Adah bore Eliphaz to Esau, and Basemath bore Reuel. Oholibamah bore Jeush and Jalam and Korah. These are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. And Esau took his wives, his sons, and his daughters, and all the people of his household, and his cattle, and all his camels, and all his property that he had acquired in the land of Canaan. And he went to another land because of his brother Jacob. For their possessions were too numerous for them to dwell together, and the land of their sojournings could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau dwelt on Mount Seir Esau, that is Edom. And these are the generations of Esau, the progenitor of Edom, on Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, son of Adah, the wife of Esau; Reuel, son of Basemath, the wife of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. And Timnah was a concubine to Eliphaz, son of Esau, and she bore to Eliphaz Amalek. These are the sons of Adah, the wife of Esau. And these are the sons of Reuel: Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. These are the sons of Basemath, the wife of Esau. And these are the sons of Oholibamah, daughter of Anah. daughter of Zibeon, the wife of Esau. She bore to Esau Jeush, Jaalam, and Korah. These became the chieftains of the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, Esau's firstborn, chief Teman, chief Omar, chief Zepho, chief Kenaz, chief Korah, chief Gatam, chief Amalek. These are the chieftains of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Adah. And these are the sons of Reuel, the son of Esau, chief Nahat, chief Zerah, chief Shammah, and chief Mizah. These are the chieftains of Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Bashemat, the wife of Esau. And these are the sons of Aholibamah, the wife of Esau, chief Jeush, chief Jaalam, chief Korah. These are the chieftains of Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah, the wife of Esau. These are the sons of Esau, and these are their chieftains. He is Edom. So there's a lot there. That's the conclusion of the 6th portion. We'll start with the storyline before we get into the lineages again. So when he makes that journey as he's told to do, God reaffirms the same covenant. The land I gave to Abraham and to Isaac, I will give to you and to your seed. After you, I will give the land. God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. And so he's got this monument. He consecrates it with oil and libation. So like wine, basically. And he named the place Bethel. So as they're traveling to Ephrat, Rachel is giving birth. She has Benjamin, but she dies in labor. And so coming back to this earlier, recall that when he was leaving Laban, and Laban hunted them down, he basically said, let anyone who has taken your property be killed. Something to that effect. So, because he didn't know Rachel had taken the idol. And that's obviously no good. So, that's ultimately likely why she perishes here, because of the vow he made when he was telling Laban, yeah, go ahead and search my things, and whoever has your stuff among my people, let them die. So he didn't know it at the time, but he cursed her to her own death. And that's because she took her father's idol when they left. But Benjamin is born, and at least that is good. So she goes out being told, don't lament, you've given your husband another son. So he makes a monument on her grave in Bethlehem, and it stays there to this day, so it says. And he stayed in the land, and while they were there, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And he heard of it, and so the sons of Jacob were 12. So what is the significance of that? What does that mean? So basically what this means is, because Reuben laid with the concubine, who was one of Jacob's wives, essentially, by doing this, he basically closes the gate on the total number of sons that he has. Benjamin is the last son that he has. And one might be wondering, so why is it like this? Basically, it's from this perspective. This situation took place. His son betrayed him. But now that this has happened, there's going to be a discrepancy. Any children born after this might not be his. That's what I assume is the reason, just based on reading it myself. He lays with Bilhah, his father's concubine. His father hears about it, and so, therefore, the sons of Jacob are 12. So that's because he heard about it, because it happened, the total number is 12. That's what I interpret as the meaning. That's the reason it stops there, and because there's no reason he couldn't try to keep having more kids, right? But no, from here on, okay, well, now we know from here, this is the cutoff point. Any children born after this, they don't count. So there we have the breakdown of the different sons. And then I had mentioned in the previous reading, but the concern that he would not get to bury or say goodbye to his father. Well, it turns out that even though he was concerned about his own impending death, Isaac lived many more years. And so he lived to be 180, and both sons ended up burying him together. Just like Isaac and Ishmael were able to bury their father together, the two sons buried their father together as well. So it's a nice farewell to the patriarch Isaac. Now we get the whole breakdown of the different tribes that come from Esau, which is that is Edom. So the Edomites, which is basically several different tribes and whatnot. That's really the significance. I'm not going to break this down too much, but I am going to break down one specific part. Esau took his wives, his sons, and his daughters, and all the people of his household, and all his cattle and everything, and he left. He went to another land because of Jacob. Their possessions were too numerous for them to dwell together, and the land of their sojournings could not support them because of their livestock. So he took Mount Seir Esau. So significant, like, why does he leave, right? Well, there's the birthright consideration. That's part of it. But also, we have this reaffirmation of the blessing saying, I will give this land to you and to your seed after you. So that's why Esau has to go. Like, why not Jacob leave? Well, no, why didn't Israel leave? Well, no, this land is his. So that's why Esau would leave rather than Israel and his people leaving, at least in my perspective. So the other thing that's significant here, we just see the different names of the different descendants and tribes. There's one that sticks out to me that's going to be extremely relevant later, and it's extremely relevant to the Jewish people, and that name is Amalek. So the Amalekites, Amalek, they are to be remembered. And hopefully I will remember this moment later on when I'm talking about them, when they come up much later in the story. But these, in any case, are the many people that together are called Edom. Now we can go ahead and move on to the 7th portion. Chapter 36 of Genesis, verse 20. These are the sons of Seir the Horite, the inhabitants of the land, Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anah. Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan, these are the chieftains of the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and the sister of Lotan was Timnah. And these are the sons of Shobal, Alvan, Manahat, and Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. And these are the sons of Zibeon, Ayah and Anah. He is Anah who found the mules in the wilderness when he pastured the donkeys for his father Zibeon. And these are the sons of Anah, Dishon and Oholibama, the daughter of Anah. And these are the sons of Dishan, Hemdan, Eshban, Itran, and Heran. And these are the sons of Ezer, Bilhan, Zaavan, and Akan. These are the sons of Dishan, Uz, and Ran. These are the chieftains of the Horites, Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, and Chief Anah. Chief Dishon, Chief Ezer, and Chief Dishan. These are the chieftains of the Horites according to their chieftains in the land of Seir. And these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the children of Israel. Bela, son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. Bela died, and Joab, son of Zerah of Bozrah, reigned in his stead. And Jobab died, and Husham of the land of the Temanites reigned in his stead. Husham died, and Hadad, son of Bedad, who defeated Midian in the field of Moab, reigned in his stead. The name of his city was Avith. Hadad died, and Samlah of Masrekah reigned in his stead. Samlah died, and Saul of Rehoboth by the river reigned in his stead. Saul died, and Baal-Hanan, son of Achbor, reigned in his stead. Baal-Hanan, son of Achbor, died, and Hadar reigned in his stead. The name of his city was Pau. His wife's name was Mehetabel, daughter of Matred, the daughter of Mezahab. And these are the names of the chieftains of Esau, according to their clans, according to their places, by their names: Chief Timnah, Chief Alva, Chief Jethet, Chief Oholibama, Chief Elah, Chief Pinon, Chief Kenaz, Chief Teman, Chief Mibzar, Chief Magdiel, Chief Iram. These are the chieftains of Edom according to their dwelling place in the land of their possession. That is, Esau, progenitor of the Edomites. So what is the significance of all those names? Why do we need to know those names and those tribes? What's the deal with that? Because that is a lot. And what is the significance? They're not the people of Israel. So what does it matter? They're not the people of Israel, but they are the people of Esau. They are family. Even though they are not the Israelites, they are immediate family. Esau is Israel's brother. And this will be significant once again. The idea is like this. All these different people come from this line. All these chieftains, all these clans, all these kings and groups. All this. It becomes very easy to lose track of who your family is when you have all these changes in hegemony and all these changes in names. So by documenting them here, it is abundantly clear in the future who is who and how they are related to the people of Israel, should it come up for any particular reason, which, spoiler, it will be relevant to an extent. So it's very significant that we know who all of the people are that descend from Esau, the progenitor of the Edomites. That is why we go over those names. That is why we need to know those names and the exchanges of power and all of the significance there, because ultimately they are descendants of Esau, and that is extremely important because, again, you can't forget who your people are. That's just That's part of the rules. And it's certainly going to be relevant later. In any case, that concludes the 7th and final portion of this week's Torah portion, Vayishlach. Thank you so much for tuning in. I would say the biggest takeaway is the power that has been bestowed upon Jacob, now Israel, in this particular portion, or rather the expression of that power, namely that he is able to send an angel ahead of himself. That really shows that he has inherited the blessing as promised, and it's really manifested now in the ability to go forth. And also, it shows that even though he knows his position, he never forgets the fact that he could still be destroyed. He doesn't forget that he has done things to cause people to dislike him, and he's always mindful of that. It seems that of the 3 patriarchs, he is the most fearful of the 3, and that makes perfect sense. Unlike the first 2, Abraham was the very first, and he had unshakable faith. He had no competition in that fact. Isaac was the next successor, and he was not the firstborn, but it was clearly indicated by the parents that he would be the successor. Jacob is where things get a little tricky, because the means in which he acquired this particular birthright and blessing were duplicitous, so they were not entirely your standard blessing, and that is, of course, why he has all these reservations, because unlike the previous 2, it was sloppy. It was a messy situation. Also, I think it's really quite impressive, the significance of it, because the idea of Reuben laying with Bilhah, and then thus because of that, again, that's my interpretation. Like, because of that happening, that puts the end cap on the total number of sons. That Benjamin is the final son. That's like, wow, what a shock! Like, this action happened, and it's amazing that there was no execution or anything of the nature for having committed this crime of adultery. But I don't even know what to make of it. I mean, it's just definitely not cool. But because of it, that's the end of that. No more tribes, just the 12. There will be no other sons of Israel because he can't know for sure that they're his. That's, again, my personal interpretation of why that's significant. But all in all, it's nice to see the brothers reunited. It's nice to see that they were able to bury their father together. It's nice to see the affirmation of the covenant. And it shows also that the covenant is absolute. Even if you do something wrong, you have a covenant with a higher power that will protect you. It's a nice thing to have someone to look out for you. It might seem a little unfair to everybody else, but that's just how it goes, isn't it? In any case, we don't forget who our family are, even the ones who go by a different name and move far away. Always remember them. They may be relevant someday. So never forget who your ancestors are and who your kinsmen are. And I think we can go ahead and conclude on that. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Please feel free to reach out and let me know what you thought of this particular reading of Parashat Vayishlach, and any thoughts you may have about the content itself. As for me, this has been Shmuel Moshe with your weekly Parashahcast. I truly appreciate you listening, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Until then, farewell. Baruch Hashem.